Okay, so we are going to go over 5.1. So first we're going to jump down here. So what we're doing this section is basically they're giving us two functions divided by each other, and we are trying to simplify it. So all we're doing is we're just factoring. So when I look at this first one, I'm just going to look at the top. So 5x plus 10, not a lot of room. And I see that I can take a 5 out of both of those. So I just take a 5 out and I'm left with x plus 2. Okay, so then that's what they wrote right here. And then for the bottom, I can't take anything out, right? It doesn't look like I can factor that or simplify it anymore. So I'm just going to leave it like that. And then what you notice is that I have an x plus 2 on bottom and an x plus 2 on top. So those two things are going to cancel out. So what I'm left with is 5. So that's going to be my final answer. So pretty simple. The most difficult part is going to be factoring it out and simplifying it, like either the top or the bottom. But once you do that, you're just looking for common things which can cancel out. So worst case for like factoring, just use the calculator. So for this one, 8x minus 6, if I'm just looking at the top, I see that I can take a 2 out. So that's what they do right here. So they're left with 4x minus 3 inside. And then for the bottom, they have just rewrote this to put the x in front. So you just got to make sure that this negative stays with the 4x. So they have negative 4x plus 3. So they just switched those. And then they took a negative 1 out because that x value has a negative, which we don't love. So they just took a negative 1 out, which means the inside, you're just going to change those sides. So then you do that and you see that you have a 4x minus 3 on top, 4x minus 3 on bottom. So those cancel out and you're left with negative 2. I'll let you look over example 4 on your own. Let's quickly do this one up here, example 5. So for 3x minus 15, I see that I can take a 3 out. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm left with x minus 5 inside. Sorry, that's a 5. And then on the bottom, I see I can take a 7 out. So I'm left with x minus 5. So now I can cancel these x minus 5s. Those cancel out. So my answer is just 3/7. Okay, so down here they get a little trickier, but again, worst comes to worst, just plug the function into the calculator on the computer so you can get the correct factor, and then you should be able to see it. So let's do example 6. So for this one, I need times together, it's going to give me 2, and I add together to give me negative 3. So what it is it's going to be x minus 2, x minus 1. And then on bottom, I need something that times together to give me negative 8. I add it together to get me 2. So that is going to be, it's going to be 4 and 2 plus 4 and x minus 2. Okay, so now I see I can cancel out x2 and x2. So my answer is just x minus 1 over x plus 4. Okay, and then this one, example 7, you're going to do the same type of thing. That one, like this bottom one, might be a little more complicated where you may need to plug it in. This one is just the difference of squares. Okay, so here, what they're doing is just reviewing how to multiply fractions. So when you multiply fractions, you have two options. So this right here, I can just go 21 times by 7 equals negative 47, and then 3 times 3 is 105. So you just times the top together to get the top, and then bottom to get the bottom. Or another option, and I'm going to rewrite this. So I can rewrite 21. 21 equals 7 times 3. Not 7, yeah, 7 times 3. And then 35 equals 7 times 5. And then 7 and 3, I can't rewrite that at all. It's just 7 times 1 or 3 times 1. So once I rewrite them, I see that I'm going to have my 7s will cancel out because I've got a 7 on top and bottom. And then I have a 3 on the bottom and the top. So when you're timesing things together, it doesn't matter if it's on the same fraction. Like, see, these two 7s were on the same fraction, which is fine, but then they can also be on the opposite fractions as long as they're times together. So that's why those can cancel out. So then you're left with 7/5. And if you were to reduce this fraction, it would reduce to 7/5. So you get the same answer. So now we're doing that, but just with functions. So starting at the 7x plus 7, they saw they could take a 7 out. So then they're left with x plus 1. And then x plus 4, we can't simplify it all. Now here, this x squared minus x minus 20, let's see, you can factor that out to be x minus 5, x plus 4. And then here, they took out a 7 first, so they were left with x squared minus 6x minus 7. And then this in here, you can factor even more to x minus 7 and x plus 1. So I'm just going to rewrite this really quick so it's more clear. So once you factor everything out, you're going to be left with 7 over x times x plus 1 over x plus 4 times by x. Oops. Sorry. X minus 5, x plus 4 divided by 7 times x minus 7, x plus 1. And again, this is just, we're just getting that from factoring everything out, okay? So then I see that I have an x plus 4 on the side and this side, so those cancel out. I have an x plus 1 and an x plus 1, and I have a 7 and a 7. So now I'm just left with x minus 5 over x minus 7. Okay, so let's do this one over here, example 9. So that top one, oh man, that is cubes, which I have forgotten. So I'm gonna let you do it. But it's the same basic idea. You're just gonna factor it out, and then here, let's do this one. This one will be doable for me to do in my head. So to start out with this, I'm gonna start on top left, so I can see that I can take a 5 out. So I'm left with x squared minus 10x, not 10x, because I took a 5 out. So I'm 2x minus 3. And then on the bottom, I can take an x squared out. So I'm left with x plus 1. Then over here, I can take an x squared out. So I'm left with x minus 1. And on the bottom, I need something that times together gives me -6, and I add together gives me -5. So it's going to be x minus 6, x plus 1. Now, before I finish, I bet I can factor this out. So I would need something where I times together to give me -3, add together to give me -2. And I can't forget about that 5. So it's going to give me x minus 3 and x plus 1. And then everything else is going to stay the same. Okay, so now I'm gonna look at simplified things. So I have an x plus 1 and an x plus 1. You could have canceled out this x plus 1 instead of that one. It doesn't make a difference. I have an x squared here and here. And that looks like it. So my answer is going to be 5x minus 3, x minus 1 over x plus 1, and x minus 6. Okay, so now we're going over dividing fractions. So the idea of this, to divide, what I personally like to do, and this is what they're showing you to do, whenever I'm dividing by anything, I like to put it as a fraction. So if it's not, so this 6x minus 9 isn't a fraction, so I like to just write it as a fraction, which you can just do by dividing by 1, which is they do right here. The reason you do that is because to divide two fractions together, the best thing is going to be to multiply by the reciprocal. So all you're doing is that first fraction is going to stay the same, and then you're going to multiply instead of divide, and you're just going to flip the fraction upside down. So now the 1's on top and the 6x minus 9's on bottom. Then from there, you're just doing the same thing. So they just factored this out, and they get left with this. So, sorry, I'm going through this fast, but I'm going to come to example 13 and quickly do it. So first I'm going to rewrite it because I want to multiply. So I'm going to say 3x to the 5th and y to the 5th over 10x squared. And then I times by, and then I flip them. So I have 2y squared up here, and then 5x squared y squared up here. Okay, so this one, all these values are being times by each other. So I don't need to factor it out. I can just start canceling things. So if you remember really quick, I'm going to go to this example right here. When things are times together, I can cancel them. So this I have 7 times 3 times 7, over 3 times 5 times 7. So that's when I could start canceling things out. When they're added together, so like right here, I can't just get rid of like an x squared and an x squared because they're being subtracted or added. And so that's why I simplified it into like this, where I have 5 times x minus 3 times x plus 1. So for this very last one, I've got 3 times x to the 5th times y to the 5th times 2y squared divided by 10x squared times 5x squared times y squared. So what I can do now is I can say I've got a y squared here and a y squared there. Awesome. And now I've got an x squared, and I have 5 x's up there, so it's not going to take all the way the x's, it's just going to take 2 away, so I'm left with 3 x cubed. And then even more so, I can say I have an x squared here and an x cubed here, so it's going to take all but 1x away. And then I have a 10 down here, I have a 10, and I have a 2. So I can take this 2 away, and I can take, because this 10 down here, I can rewrite as 2 times 5. So I'm just taking that 2 out, and I'm just going to be left with 5. So my final answer is going to be 3 because I didn't touch that. I just had 1x left. Then I have y to the 5th divided by, I've got a 5 left on bottom, times by 5. So I should actually write this as 3x y divided by 25. And that should be my answer. So I know that's a little more complicated, but hopefully that makes sense. Let's quickly do example 14. So just here where I see divide, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite that as being multiplied by the opposite. So I'll just rewrite this whole thing. And I'm going to rewrite x plus 3. Well, I'll just leave it for now. X squared minus 9 times by 2x minus 6 divided by 5x. So now I'm going to multiply it and I'm going to switch it. So now my x is on top and the x squared plus 7x running out of room plus 12 on bottom. So now I'm going to start here and I'm just going to factor out. X plus 3 I can't factor out, but with it being squared, I'm just going to rewrite it to be x plus 3 times x plus 3. Then on bottom, x squared minus 9, I can factor into x plus 3 and x minus 9. That times by 2x minus 6, I can take a 2 out, and I'm left with x minus 3. And on bottom, 5x isn't going to factor. Ooh, struggling, there we go. So it just stays the same. Then the next one, x is going to stay as is. And my x squared plus 12, I need something that times together gives me 12. I add together gives me 7. So it's going to be 3 and 4. So I have x plus 3, x plus 4. Okay, so now I'm just going through. I have an x plus 3 on bottom and top. And I have an x plus 3 over here. So those cancel. This is supposed to be a 3. I think I said that, but wrote it wrong. So now this x minus 3 cancels with that x minus 3. This x cancels with that x. So I am left with just 2 on top, and on bottom I have 5x plus 4. Just like that. Okay, this story problem. All you're doing, don't let it confuse you. All you're going to do is plug in this 100 books. So you'll just plug in 100 for these x's. Just plug them into a calculator and you'll get an answer. And then for B, 1,000 books, you'll just plug in 1,000 to those x values. Okay, this one, all we're doing is plugging in x. We're plugging in -2 for x. So you can just do that and do it in your calculator, or you can simplify this. So an option would be to say, I can factor that top one to be x minus 3 and x minus 1 over x minus 1. So now the x minus 1s are going to cancel out. So I'm just left with x minus 3. And now I just need to plug -2 in. So I say -2 minus 3, which gives me -5, which is my answer. Okay, hopefully this kind of makes a little sense and is helpful. Okay. And let's